Hey there, cats and kitties. I'm the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. In this video, discussing my thoughts on episode 7 of the anime series Sakurada Reset. And, well, alrighty then. Apparently, Oka Eri has gotten her hands effectively on Haruki's reset ability, and for all intents and purposes, removed her memories of how exactly to utilize it. This is very much explaining away the sort of limitations and ramifications of Oka Eri's abilities as reported through Tsushima 2K, and it's just crazy how manipulative this chick is. And it's intriguing because we find out much more about how it's a pseudo form of brainwashing, her ability, wherein she can either implant false memories into someone's mind, a la what she does with Marase at one point with the, murderous monkey she believes is chasing her, or at least giving her very pointed looks, at her and everything like that. She's all kinds of freaked out, and there was no such monkey ever in her encounter with Oka Eri, as well as the fact that she has gone in and taken out the memory of how exactly to bring about the reset in Haruki. And this is similarly so what she did with the old man Sasano, who had the ability to go into the pictures that he took and everything, and we find out actually it wasn't all chalked up the way we first assumed it was, where his ability allowed him to walk into these pictures. Rather was it the ability he utilized when he took the pictures. So the pictures themselves can be entered by practically anyone. They are the containers of his ability after taking those photographs, thus making it allowable, as we see toward the end of the episode, for Oka Eri to forcibly put Kei into one to hold him off from being able to go and save, Haruki from whatever latest amount of BS Oka Eri's going to do by that point to her, And it's absolutely fascinating from a psychological standpoint because, of course, we call back on Oka Eri's humble origins, somewhat disastrous broken home origins, in the fact that she was dealing with a father who was abusive verbally as well as physically. Her mother was, I guess, conditioned to the point where she could only cry and feel bad for her daughter. She didn't feel as though she could do anything to break them free from this abusive household. And here comes Kei, who somehow or another got his hands on, air quotes, leaked information that the father had inadvertently leaked, and they would hold as a ransom over his head. Basically he's telling Eri, hold this over his head, get him out, get him to leave, say, I'll leak this unless you leave us be, and you leave the home for good and all this stuff. And what's more, Kei puts this idea into her mind that she can take on the name Oka, become a new persona, and it's something she does. She adapts to herself. But out of this, she begins in her observations of Kei to see him as becoming weaker, going back the 2 years ever since Sumire died. Sumire, we see in the start of the episode, is the girl in the photograph that, Kei had seen at Sasano's, and you're wondering exactly what the dynamic was there. What is the relationship between Sasano and Sumire? Did they know each other? Were they related? Whatever like that. Was it just happenstance? Of course, Sasano's own flashback in entering one of the photos he took, as we see in this episode, seems to suggest to me he's meeting the younger witch, as we were introduced to in the previous episode, because she could see the future. She puts her hand on his chest and she is able to see what their futures will be. And so, sort of almost beyond where the witch is in the here and now, is Sasano able to communicate, and whatever plans they have seem to also involve their reuniting in the here and now, in the present day. But that could spell disaster. People could be hurt out of that as a result of that. And it's all somewhat confusing, all of those aspects of it. But all of what, Oka Eri's sort of current opinion of Kei has to do with, as far as why he is that much weaker, seems to revolve around the turning point in his life of what happened to Sumire, going back those 2 years ago, and sort of refamiliarizing the fact that they had a relationship, as we see with that flashback of them meeting on the seaside with the sunset and everything, very beautiful, calling back to the way he had seen the photo of her and everything like that. It was just there to sort of remind you of the fact that this is probably what is holding him back. This is probably something that really affected him. And Oka Eri sees this as the penultimate weakness that she wants to challenge. She wants to bring back the old version of Kei, who was much more easily manipulative to others, and this cat who came up and said, here, hold this over your father's head, take on this new guise, this new name, and become a better version of yourself. And it's very much almost a working version of the fugue state, which is what I believe it's called, when somebody retreats into their own mind and either is entirely mute or ends up creating an alternate persona through which to now live and survive. In this case, for Okaeri, it would be, she was the weakling as she once was, the sort of victim of the abuse that she once was. This was a hardship she could not really bear. Even in the absence of her father, she needed to become a new persona. So she became the stronger Okaeri, the more punk, outspoken and flying by the seat of her pants and courageous Okaeri, which is a completely new persona in a sense. And it's very much like, we're seeing it actually playing out. It's not just like sitting back and speaking hypothetically about psychological traumas and reactions to that. It's also kind of like the multiple personality disorder kind of framework, where she is operating under an entirely new personality, one that is not afraid to mess about and get into trouble and cause trouble, and even, gets off on that a little bit. And so when Kay finally, does catch up with her in this episode, there is some dialogue on his part that says, I should have never told you to just become a new persona altogether. You lost something in taking on this new guise. I should have not had you dismiss away entirely who you were up to that point. Because, in eschewing that, she's lost so much of the importance of the experiences of her life. She could have taken every best step forward without having to just close that door entirely, because now she's a more despicable person. If she had, hearkened back to that and held on to that, those abuses and how it made her feel, there is still a lesson to be learned from that. She might have been much more empathetic and sympathetic had she actually applied those things to her life rather than just throwing them in the refuse bin. And I have to agree with Kay, but there's also a level of, psychologically speaking, when you're looking at Okaeri, what is she doing this for? Why is she so consumed with snapping Kay back a few pegs? Why is she so, consumed with removing the reset ability and just playing with him and wreaking havoc on his life? Is there a chance that this is the Eri of old? Those aspects of her still lingering, still unable to be fully eschewed away, crying out for help, in a sense. Is this her old persona saying, I don't like what we've become? And the reason we've become this monstrous Okaeri form is because of Kay. He deserves retribution for having made us make this more despicable change. She in no way gives this off verbally as hints to this possibly being the case, but just her actions. The fact that she is so focused, it's almost like she's trying to get revenge on Kay. But if he made her life better, why seek revenge? She doesn't really feel like this is her better nature. She doesn't really feel like this is who she truly ought to be. And it's Kay who, in her own mind, forcibly brought about that change that she now finds so undesirable. She will be outspoken that this is very much who she is, that she is very much salacious to the idea of ruining him and messing with him and everything like that. But I think it's a cry for help. I think she hates having disdained that part of herself that was weaker, because it was a balance. There was an equilibrium inside her mind that, through his guidance, she threw away. And now she doesn't like who she really is. She doesn't like this persona. She's lashed out, but she's kind of just riding that wave until something can wake her up. And it's interesting that that's an aspect, a quotient to her ability, that, that is the one weak point to her ability. If someone can snap back into the brain of someone who's been manipulated by her, whether a false memory was implanted in their brain or they were made to forget something, as happened to both Marase and Haruki respectively in this episode, there is still the aspect if someone can snap them too and show them the reality of the scenario and get them to, jog their memory, they can undo it. It's that simply undone. Unfortunately, with Haruki, it's that much harder because she is the only one, as they say in the dialogue, who knows how she brought about the reset. She's the only one who could utilize that particular ability. And so it's very much Empire Strikes Back level cliffhanger material, this whole episode, because our heroes are losing, and holy crap, are they losing very badly. But again, I believe it's all systematic of this procedural mentality of Oka Eri having become this much more, raucous, dislikable, personality, this manipulative personality. And I think maybe deep down inside she realizes that what she's doing is abusive in a similar fashion to how she once was abused herself. And she doesn't like it. She can't control it, though, because this is the full-on persona she now encapsulates. I don't know what exactly it will be that will maybe, dial her back and wake her up. Maybe there is something she needs to be reminded of that only Kei or Haruki can bring about. Maybe it's something to do with the outlying stories of Susanoo and the witch, their reunification, whatever that means for the grander scope of things. I feel like a lot of the information passed about in this episode was again setting up things later on down the line. You don't necessarily need to know in the here and now for the story they're telling, confined specifically to this episode and the overall 3-episode arc. But there are other bits of information they throw here and there at you that, again, you don't really need to know for this specific story, this part of it, but will spell out the larger scheme. Like very much Oka Eri is the focus of this story arc, but what's going on around them, to do with the witch, to do with Susanoo, I don't know if this is all going to be wrapped up by the third and final part of this arc, the next episode next week. But it really intrigued me. This psychological dilemma, this walking fugue state that is Oka Eri, this alternate persona, finding out how this persona was brought about, and you kind of almost get the impression, like when she's talking about how Kei used to be so much more badass and everything, like, oh, did he walk around like a punker like she does, a party animal and all this stuff? Not really. I mean, he just looked like a typical student with his uniform and everything, but it just so happened that because of his sort of righteous way of carrying himself about, he wanted to help her. He wanted to help her break free of this abusive, family life. And somehow or another, he managed to get his hands on information that would allow her to do that. Very much being manipulative to her outstanding life at that point. And again, planting the seed for her to embrace an entirely new persona. One that, in some manner or other, seeks retribution for this transgression. And this is the Oka Eri we find now, who is very much consumed with just making Kei's life absolute hell. And the fact that she got the leg up in this episode, she managed to get rid of that reset. It is gone. The memory of how to utilize it, temporarily though it may be, it is of no use to them any longer. And that is a threat. That is an Empire Strikes Back level WTF-ery for our heroes. How are they going to be, rebounding from this? And that had me on the edge of my seat. I'm just like, holy hell. The chips are thoroughly stacked against our pseudo protagonists, our heroes. And, damn, I can't wait to see how this concludes in the third episode, third chapter of this particular self-contained arc, and to also see what the ramifications are of it, what, how much further outlying the reaches of it will go, and what exactly it is that, the witch and Susanoo, like, is it strictly that they want to reunite? Is that their only mission? Or is there something else? It seems to me there's something else that sort of the garnish to whatever they're trying to bring about, that has already been set in motion for 28 some odd years. Whatever that is they're trying to bring about, one of the sort of garnishes to that will be their reunification. And that seemingly is going to spell out something bad for someone. I'm guessing one of our main characters, but I have no idea. I really have no idea. And but it's interesting when you think back on the fact that, you know, Sumir's story feels like it's not done. She has yet to come back into the story, and that will be an inevitability. And with this photograph having been taken, there is a way to communicate with her. The question is, will she be brought back out of that photograph and very much alive and well again? Will this involve an even bigger timey-wimey time travel ability where they'll be able to go back and undo her death initially? And if they do, won't that unwind everything that has happened since then? It like blows my mind. You know, it seems like Oka Eri is very much acting of her own devices, but it seems like whatever she's about to get up to with messing Kay about, it's at least working, you know, sort of successfully towards seeing through whatever it is Sasano and the witch have going. That's my speculation, that's my guess, that's my hypothesizing. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of this particular episode of Sakurada Reset as well. If you found it as compelling as I did, if you think the psychology of Oka Eri is as intriguing as I do, and, you know, your other outlying speculations for what is to come, whether you think Oka Eri has been working in tandem with Sasano and the witch, whether she's just working alongside them in no relation to them and it's just working to their benefit, as I speculate, and whether you think there's anything to that aspect, that she's trying to snap Kay back a peg because she wants to retaliate against him for so changing her life, and not necessarily for the better, arguably for the better. And yeah, otherwise, bring on the next one. That'll be pretty much it for me on this one. This video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.